Hello, welcome. Today I've got a panel of family dispute resolution practitioners, mediators, and as a special event for International Women's Day, to really focus in on the topic of empowering women through mediation. We'll mainly focus on family law mediation. First thing we'll do is some quick introductions. I'm Joanne Law. I'm the Director of Mediation Institute and co-founder of Interact Support, which is a not-for-profit where I do all of my mediations. I'm also a director of the Mediator Standards Board and Mediators Beyond Borders. So I'm very involved with a great number of mediators around Australia and around the world. So I'll just go around our panel just in the order I see them. So Lisanne, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Joanne. I'm Lisanne Eriks, and I am based in Perth, and I am an FDRP and MS accredited mediator, and I am the owner of Life Mediation, where I do all my mediation, my private practice. So mostly I do family mediations, and I do some other mediations as well, and the co-founder of the Co-Parenting Institute, where we run the course Turning Point, which is for co-parenting conflict, and the Cooperate app, a co-parenting app, which is very exciting. So yeah, and I'm also involved in Mediators Beyond Borders and other things. So love mediation and love helping people to resolve conflict.
Thanks, Lisanne. And John, would you like to introduce yourself?
I've been a mediator for a long time. You can see I'm not a young guy. And it's changed me. And I think if you stay mediating for long enough, it can change you too. You genuinely become a person who's able to reframe as a matter of course, who thinks about conflict as a matter of course, and who behaves quite differently over time. Really, it's a marvellous profession to be part of because it does change you for the better, I think. 24 years with Relationships Australia in Queensland, and now I'm retired from that, but still practicing doing freelance things, working with the MI, and I built a course which might come up later in the conversation.
Thank you, John. And Zahara, would you like to introduce?
Thank you, Joanne. So my name is Zara. I am a co-partner. I'm a partner at Sincere Legal, a law firm based in Sydney, and I'm also a accredited mediator. I've been a solicitor for longer than I've been a mediator, admittedly, but I really enjoyed mediating. And I think having the experience of advocating for clients and really seeing the toll that the court process and the legal process has on clients, and certainly particularly women and survivors of domestic violence and family violence, it's given me a greater appreciation, I think, for the opportunity that mediation provides for those individuals. Yeah, very passionate about mediating.
Wonderful, thank you. And Marilyn, last but not least, or almost last, we'll introduce Rowena.
I won't bore you too much. I've been a mediator for about 25 years, to be honest. I'm a director of my own company called First Step Mediation, and we operate mainly out of the Illawarra and south of Sydney. I'm also a board director of the Australian Dispute Resolution Association. I'm passionate about seeing mediators being trained well so they can, of course, help you to navigate this system that's fraught with danger and stress. Over to you, Joanne. Let's start talking about it.
Wonderful. And we'll just briefly introduce Rowena.
I'm sorry, Rowena.
That's all right.
Actually, I'm a marketing manager at Mediation Institute. But Rowena, would you like to say?
Yeah, I've been working with the Mediation Institute for the last 2 years and have learned a lot about mediation and the process. I look forward to seeing different views from all the panel today. So
thank you, Rowena. Look, one of the things that was mentioned in our introductions was family violence, and that might be a good place to start because we know statistically women are more subject to family violence. We know that it has really profound effects on you if that's what you're experiencing. But one of the questions is mediation even possible if there is family violence? And it's such an important aspect that we probably all want to share our perspective on that. From my point of view, as someone who trains mediators and provides mediation, our obligations under the regulations that can govern the work that family dispute resolution practitioners provide is that we need to determine if there has been family violence or there's other things that may affect people's ability to negotiate freely. It's the fact that there has family violence doesn't mean you can't mediate, but it does mean that the mediator has to take that into account, ideally discuss it with you and work out what modifications might need, or even if it is going to be possible. Marilyn, I saw you saying here, yes. So,
I think from the onset, yes, the obligations are absolutely imperative to what we do, our obligations to you. I think it's incredibly important to look at safety as the number one factor when coming into a mediation setting. A most robust and very carefully thought out and planned intake pre-mediation conference with each party is a must, not just a 10-minute discussion about how things are going and let's go to the mediation. I think we need to do a safety audit of the venue that we're going to be using, whether we do the mediation via shuttle, where parties don't come into contact at all. And I think we need to ensure that we have plan A, plan B, and plan C all ready to go. And of course, first of all, is it suitable? Can we do it? And with modification of our process, in many instances, we can, only with that modification in place. So that's, I think, really important.
Yeah. I think I like to use, like, lawyers are really useful in this space, I think, as well, when there's some, I have them in the mediation. And of course, sometimes people think that lawyers are trying to aggravate it, but in my experience, there's lots of really good lawyers out there who are actually great at supporting someone through a mediation process, like, that feels quite vulnerable. And if they don't know what to say, or they just want to roll over because they want to get out of it, that they can say, listen, this is not good for you. They get advice, they feel more secure. And I think the other thing is, often people say we shouldn't mediate when there's violence, but going to court is not going to be a very great experience for a victim of domestic violence either, if not worse. It doesn't mean that should override looking at suitability. Some things have to go to court and some things are not suitable for mediation, but I think it's a bit naive to say, well, let's just send a victim of domestic violence to court, it will be all okay. They're not going to think about who's going to be in the hallway. You just have to rock up, and if they don't have money, they won't have representation. And anyway, and the list goes on and on. So I like to do modifications as much as I can and really support someone through it. And I think that's why the intake, I agree with you, Marilyn, is so important. If someone feels safe with you as a mediator, and you know that you believe in what they're saying, and you're there to support, and also saying, listen, not all of it is going to be pleasant either. You might feel anxious, and there's all these things you can do. I think it can really help. It can be part of healing as well if it's done well, I think.
I agree with you, Lisane. I think lawyers are a must in any type of mediation that we do. The lawyers that I've worked with have been incredibly supportive, especially in terms of balancing the power within the mediation. And as you said, court may not be a great alternative, particularly with how protracted that experience can be for parties. And I guess the longer it goes on without knowledge, the worse it can probably get. So there's lots of things to consider.
Yeah. And
if I can chip in, I think the process, you're right, Marilyn, can become a new kind of violence.
As
women struggle financially, maybe, but struggle with a process that looks as though it might exclude them or filter them in some way. And I'm a great fan in just asking the person, What do you think? You've had domestic violence in your life. You've talked about it and been free about it. What do you think? Do you think that you can mediate with Harry, with someone like me in the room?
I think that's really important, but I think delving a little bit deeper too, we've really got to consider sometimes people, women, and sometimes even men as well, don't even realize they're actually in a domestic violence situation. So that trauma-informed lens must be always on our nose when we're interviewing, because that can be a real factor as well. So I guess that's a skill of the mediator, isn't it? Delving deep into the situation that's happening. And in fact, we're always assessing. It's never a one-off intake assessment. The whole step from the start of first contact with the client to the end of the mediation, where either they have an agreement or orders, we're always assessing. And I think there is a place for after mediation support as well. So many things.
Now we can talk about that.
It can be very customized, I think. And I think a good mediator is one that, like Marilyn said, is trauma informed. Unfortunately, especially in the court process, there's a bias towards those who can communicate well, right? So if you can communicate well and if you can articulate yourself well, then you're often believed because you're submitting your evidence in a cohesive way. Unfortunately, unless the mediator is trauma informed, those kind of clients can fall in the cracks and they can come across as being quite evasive or difficult. But those who are trauma informed, and if the lawyers, you all mentioned lawyers, I think lawyers can do a great job if they're the kind of lawyers who are collaborative and want to resolve, they're solution focused. If they are, it works great. If they're not, it can be a bit disruptive. But again, that's where the mediator can come in and take control of the process. And I think it's quite important that the mediator is mindful whether lawyers are involved or not. It's the mediator who's facilitating the process and is in control of the process and ultimately is responsible to ensure a power balance. So that I think that's quite important. But yeah, the inability of some clients to articulate themselves, it's sad because it's difficult. It's difficult to, even during the intake interview, it's difficult to obtain those instructions. But until you understand why they're hesitant, it could be that they're ashamed, it could be that they just don't know how to articulate it. Or like you said, Marilyn, they might not even know that they're victims of domestic violence.
And we need to handle that if that becomes evident to a client within an intake, because that can be quite a traumatic moment for a client. So the trauma-informed lens, as you said, Zara, is critically important. And also, I think, Joanne, I've heard you say this so many times, we own the process as the mediators and the clients own the outcome. And I think knowledge is always powerful. So when we can clients, but not only clients, also the lawyers that we work with, because we want to work cohesively with all the legal professionals. So when we're all of an understanding and have the knowledge of what's going to happen and why and how, and we all agree to that, we can only help a situation.
No, absolutely. And I guess that flows into the idea about mediation creating agency for clients if the supports are there. and that's the critical aspect. Zara, I know your background is as a lawyer before you became a family dispute resolution practitioner. Perhaps you want to talk a little bit about how some of the strategies to make sure clients do have agency, do have to decide.
I think ultimately the fundamental principle of mediation is party self-determination, right? So we're handing this, the parties, like you said, Marilyn, they own the content. They come to us with their dispute. And as mediators, I think we need to instill some hope in the parties that they can resolve their own matters, And I think that's where agency comes in, and the creation of agency and empowerment and autonomy. I think where a mediator is committed to, once you've assessed the matter as suitable, and like you said, it's an ongoing process. You've got your suitability cap on the whole time, and you need to really be mindful of it. But once it is determined suitable, then, and if it's run well, what I find mediation can do is really allow a party, the mother or the father, whatever it may be, to resolve their own dispute in a way that maintains their dignity. And I think it's huge. As a solicitor, and I'm still a solicitor, and I see clients who are deeply ashamed of some of the most intimate parts of their life being spoken about, and not only spoken, cross-examined in open court by strangers. Often those strangers might not come from their cultural background, they might not share their religious views or beliefs, and they're inevitably, because we're all biased and the judge is biased as humans, they're judged for holding the views that they hold, or for having certain behaviors or whatnot. So where I say mediation creates agency is it gives back that power. It gives back that power to the clients to resolve their matters on their own terms. But I also think, and John, you touched on this, and I think it's quite important, it also avoids that kind of abusive process. I find that there are many victims of family violence fall into this because one party, and there is, the law does recognize that litigants can become vexatious litigants, and the court is aware of that happening. But by the time of determination or a finding is made that particular client is a vexatious litigant, this poor victim has just been pulped, really. They're exhausted. And oftentimes they end up acquiescing. They'll agree, they'll sign consent orders, they'll do whatever they need to do just to get out of the court process. So the abuse of power, the loss of dignity, the loss of control and autonomy, I think mediation really gives back these things to the clients, and the power to come to an agreement. But also, most importantly, they also are able to come back and tweak agreements. I'm sure you guys have all mediated matters. I've come back to you after 6 months. Oh, look, this is working, but this is not working so much. That in itself instills hope in the parties that they can co-parent. It's an ongoing process. This is not the end. It's not you come to a mediation and it ends there. You empower them, and you instill hope in them that they do have the ability to co-parent, and we're just there to assist. They can come back and tweak agreements as required without having to file contravention applications and get stuck in the court process.
I think, Zara, what came to my mind, Zara and John, is that saying, justice delayed really is justice denied. And if you're stuck in the court system for a year and it's protracted, the emotional impact isn't something that's being measured, but it's real. And it's unseen, but it's very much real. And all these aspects of reality testing, I think, come to the forefront when we are mediating, because we can go through with clients what the process is, what could happen if you did that, what could happen if you did something different, because we have a private session within the mediation process where we're always checking in with parties to make sure that they're okay in a confidential way. And that's where the real opportunity comes for the powers to start to be empowered and really take control when they are informed. You're
saying a year, Marilyn, but in WA, make it 4.
Oh, wow. It's
3 to 4 years.
It's
absolutely appalling. There's a lot of stuff going on here and this side of the pond, but it's really long, and it is
long. In Sydney, they say it's a year because we had all these. Well, I'm sure Marilyn, you're aware. They said all of that. In a recent conference I actually went to, the judge was speaking, and someone confronted him and said, the changes have come in, and there's a promise that from the time of the initiating application to a final hearing gets a year. Is it really a year? And he just laughed and said, oh, it's 18 months now, 2 years, we'll see, depend case by case. it's never going to be, come on guys, it's just never going to be. And these poor victims get stuck in the court process. Their lives I find that their lives are, they're just marked between mentions and directions. They just need to get through a few months. Oh, okay, there's a mention coming up, and okay, they have to prepare themselves for that. It's just
Zara, another really important point is these parents, after this battle in court, have to then come together and co-parent these children.
Yeah,
we all know.
It doesn't end.
The children fare well when parents are empowered.
Yes,
get on well. And to create a new situation like a business environment so that they can get on with the job of looking after their children.
That's right.
And not to leave out the fact that often people are broke at the end of it. Money could have been well spent on children's education and well-being, livelihood. And these parents are coming out absolutely shattered, broke from the system.
And that's one of the reasons. So with my business partner, she's a psychologist at the Co-Parenting Institute. We do a Turning Point is a course for co-parenting conflict. It's online, and anyway, I won't go into it too deep, but one of the weeks we actually talk about all the options, mediation, arbitration, like all the things, because and then they're stressed and then maybe not educated in it. There's not a lot of info. I was talking to Rowena before we came on. None of people I just didn't know, like there's not a lot of information out there. Because then I feel information is also power, and it can empower these women to go, what path is actually going to work for me, and what do I want to try out, instead of, because most people just go to a lawyer and you get a good one or not so good one. And if you have a not so good one, then you might end up in a path and 3 years down the track and 200 grand later that you didn't have, not sure what happened to your life. And not being able to co-parent anymore, which now everyone is a psychologist appointment. And if the conflict would have just been managed at the beginning. I've interviewed actually a lot of parents at the end, different spectrums, because I was interested to see what came out of it. And most people who were so far in the court process or had litigated for a long time, they said, I wish we would have had help earlier on, because we would never ended up here, and I really regret what's happened.
Really,
back time.
Absolutely.
What hope is there for those parties who've been stuck in the court process for 2 to 3 years, who've spent $200,000 each to ever have a successful co-parenting relationship? There's so much resentment built up within those 2 years. And let's be honest, every time you see the other parent, you think, you put me through hell. Why would I ever be respectful and nice?
All the affidavits that they wrote about each other.
That's right. And the intimate details and the nitty-gritty of their lives being outed in court. What hope is there of a successful co-parenting relationship?
It so much has to be. I know, just for one instance, for example, is when the litigation process does start, and then partway through the lawyers are at a crossroad with what to do next, and I get a phone call and I'm like, okay, so how come they didn't come to mediation first? That kind of gets skirted around. But then I will have the parties come in for their preliminary confidential intake conference, which I put a lot of effort into that one. That's very important. And they say to me, why didn't we know about you? And we've got to be careful. We've got to build relationships with people, and we've got to be careful about what we say. And I'm a big advocate of empowering and encouraging everybody within this space. But I have to then go and undo more damage that's been caused by initiating litigation prior to a mediation pathway. And
it's a problem. Yet as mediators, often, so someone approaches us, and it's often, if you were talking about parenting, it's the one who hasn't got much contact with the children. And then we call the other person, party B, who's often a woman, and you're going about your day and suddenly you get this call from this person, or this, depending on the process of the mediations, you get a letter or an email saying, come to mediation with this person who you're really don't want to talk to. And it's really important to talk to the mediator, engage with the mediator, because one of the things that I see that causes problems is people just get this immediate reaction and, oh, I don't want to do that and don't want to engage. And John, this was really one of the problems that you identified that led to that, the program that you developed, Conflict Management for One. And there's others that are creating coaching and preparation, even beyond that preparation for the pre-mediation. John, do you want to talk to that a little bit about what the gap was you saw?
I'd love it if you all knew about conflict management for one, but maybe you don't. It was devised, it was called FDR for One in Queensland when I worked in Relationships Queensland. And basically it gives permission to do what you do, Marilyn, to have a longer 90-minute to 120-minute one-on-one where the client benefits from the mediator's knowledge, experience, industry knowledge, some knowledge of theory, and their skills. So that can be very powerful for a client to meet you and realize that even though you're a nice person and you smile, you actually know things and things about conflict, things about the industry of divorce, because it is an industry. And you've mediated a lot, so you've met variations of the kind of domestic situations they're in before. So that can be very useful for a client to have that time before the mediation,
Absolutely,
during the mediation,
everything,
or even after the mediation if the mediation has been a big mess.
Yes.
So there's, instead of saying goodbye, I'm sorry it didn't work out, but good luck in the world, it's an invitation back in to meet not you because you've been the practitioner in the mediation, but to meet a mediator, a colleague preferably, who can then unpack what happened, have a reflection, think about next steps, keep the hope alive, Zara.
Yeah.
Full of hope inside the CM1 experience for clients. And I only innovated it because I'd met in my early and inexperienced years so many people who were just discounted.
Yeah.
They didn't fit for mediation, typically because the other one, like Joanne was saying, doesn't want to engage. What do? The other one doesn't want to engage. Or you're knocked out because the domestic violence is considered, or something else is considered to be a problem.
Yeah.
And CM1 sits there.
I think too, sometimes lawyers may not understand our process either. I think it's important to put out there that shuttle mediation is a process where if you come to mediation and you bring your lawyer or even a support person to assist you on the day, you'll actually arrive at the mediation earlier than the other party. You'll be escorted to a room. You'll have your lawyer with you. You'll have your support person. And then the other party will arrive maybe 15 minutes or half an hour later. You're not going to run into them in the car park. We'll make sure you don't run into them at the coffee shop. And that person then will go to their room with their lawyer or perhaps their support person, and a skilled mediator will then go between the two. And we're always looking at where it's safe to do so, mitigate the issues in the best interests of the children and the best interests of the ongoing relationship. And John, I'm most interested to hear about your mediation conflict analysis.
And I think you can use for domestic violence. I think Zoom is wonderful because I have mitigating the risk of people don't have to come to my office and they can be anywhere in the world. They put a background on and they don't, and also you can have a shuttle, but I also think there's more opportunity to talk face to face because it's not sort of sitting next to someone in their energy, so to speak, or having them
They're in a safe place.
There are options. There are
in a safe place.
Yeah, and they can turn it off if it really gets too much or whatever it is. And I find when there's no domestic violence and we do mediate, and particularly, and it's with or without lawyers, I do without as well. It's a really effective way, for people to feel safe, and they can turn it off or they can turn the sound, like whatever it is. We'll talk about it before an intake and we'll work out what's going to work, but I think it can be really empowering for people because if they can have that conversation, I've had really healing sessions where, particularly when there was alcohol and drugs involved and things like that, and the whole mediation was just to actually talk about that and And in this case, I had a really great male who was willing to admit and say, yeah, that's what happened. And they had a really great, but she would have not done that otherwise, I think, if she would have had to sit in a room with him and face him. And I think it would have been too much. And I said to her, you want to try it? If it doesn't work, we'll pop out and we'll do a shuttle. And it worked really well. So I think Zoom can be a really good tool.
Can I just add a tiny little bit? My problem in shuttle, Marilyn, and you might have already covered it.
Yep.
What do you do with the people, well, not with, you're shuttling between people and you're focused on party A? Great. What's party B doing? Marilyn indicates that party B's with its lawyer. And maybe if that lawyer is well trained, and I think that's the grab, is to control the lawyers.
That's the key, yes.
That's the key. If the lawyers are using some good counselling skills with that person, the mediation, terrific. But if they're, as I've walked into a shuttle room and the guy's using his phone to do TAB bets. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I've just got a bit of time spare. It's risky when you're shutting.
Is that an issue though if someone wants to switch? Because sometimes it's a really long time you're mediating. Is it also okay sometimes for someone to actually switch off for a moment and go, I just had enough for 5 minutes. I want to do something not mediation related. I don't think it's an issue necessarily. That I don't know if they have to constantly engage in the mediation conversation. It might actually be good to have a moment or go for a walk or whatever.
Well, you're kinder than I am, Lizanne, because I like to keep.
I think it depends.
On the fact you're in mediation.
I think it really depends. Sometimes what I get clients to do who are waiting while I shuttle off and go speak to the other party is to work on. They sometimes generate some options, but the options are missing details. They might say, I want supervised contact center. I want the father, for example, to have time only in a supervised contact center. I say, okay, great. To expedite that, how about you and your solicitor or your support person contact? I give them small bits of homework. Yeah, little bits of homework. Give a few contact centers a call, get some waiting times, get some fees, so that when I do come back to you and you want to make that proposal, I've got detail. We can work with it. The last thing that I want to do is have a great looking agreement and have parties leave thinking that they've got this amazing agreement, but that it's not enforceable or it's not workable, or it falls and it crumbles because the details are not there.
Absolutely, Zara.
I agree. It's a great way. Use a lot of time, sure. Do your research.
Yeah, John, I think go through all that in the pre-mediation as well. What happens when you're on your own, when I'm in the other room? This will be your homework, and we need you to find this. And I think, Zara, really good point. So many times people come into mediation for a property settlement. They haven't spoken to their accountant. They haven't spoken to the bank. One wants to take over the mortgage and buy the other out. And then they find out after the mediation that the bank won't approve it. Now, you've got a great agreement. The clients have paid a lot of money and it's not enforceable. We have to ensure that they are completely ready before they step in the room, and that every part of the process of mediation, the lawyers and the parties are informed as to what's going to happen next. It's not just let's just sit down and talk. There's a very set, specific process every step of the way of that mediation. So I think education.
That's really important. And also, it's not a single session usually, and it doesn't need to be, particularly with property, because getting the disclosure, getting agreement about the value of the assets or how they're going to be valued, that's a thing in itself. And before that, actually, people haven't had legal advice. They haven't had accurate legal advice because the lawyers can't advise them when they don't actually know what the assets are. And the other thing that we do is we talk through the considerations. So we talk through all of what they brought into the relationship, the contributions during, and sometimes people think that the contributions are only the financial contributions, and by no means. There's a huge contribution. And again, often it's women that make more of the non-financial contributions, the childcare when the children are young, often any afterwards as well.
Well, they give up their career, they give up their super to be at home,
Absolutely.
mostly to look after the children. And then in some instances to find out after doing that for 14 years, we're separating.
Yeah.
Where do we start? What happens?
Absolutely, yeah. And some of the structural inequalities that we still have within our system, differences in wages for men and women, it makes logical sense when you're in a relationship for the lower wage earner to take the time off. And it's often the inclination as well, you know, as women, we want to raise our babies.
Often we have to see, often I've seen women actually reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
And if we can support and help with the after the mediation in helping parties there, I think that's an incredible area that needs to be explored as well.
Yeah.
I've seen women come out and start new careers and own businesses and flourish. So there's just, it's such an area to explore as well, Joanne.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I really wanted to make sure we do cover is the communication outside of the mediation process, because whether it's through court or through mediation, in most cases, there's going to be shared care with children and there's going to be communication, and sometimes that can be quite toxic. Sometimes it can be abusive, but other times it's just stressing unnecessarily. And Lisanne, I know this is something you've been working on really intensely. So do you want to share a little bit about?
Yeah, absolutely. You see the logo, the Co-Parent Institute is me. And Sharon has been a psych within the court system for 32 years, working a lot with kids, and obviously been a mediator for a long time. So we looked at how can we help people communicate better? Because I think one of the things we're seeing with the change of the landscape, like you used to have a communication book where people scribbled in and they had some time to think about it, or they ripped it out later on, or you just had the landline. But now it's coming from everywhere. It's similar like when kids get bullied at school, like all of a sudden is it at home? Like there needs to be more structure around it, because a lot of clients, and I would say particularly women, are very anxious to even open up their phone. It might be a WhatsApp message, a Viber message, a missed phone call. Like now people can't work, they can't function because they're so anxious. So we've created the Cooperate app. And what it does is it has everything in one spot. So it really manages the anxiety around communication with your ex, because it's all in one spot. All your other apps and all your other things on your phone are safe and are for you to flourish and do whatever it is that you want to do with. And you communicate with your ex in that. One of the things I was really big on in the development is also limiting communication, particularly when it is toxic, because it's sheer statistics. The more you communicate, the more conflict you're going to have. And it's not that I'm not for co-parents having lots of conflict, but particularly if it's really high conflict, or if people are just really vulnerable at that time, sometimes less is more. And then later on, if you want to get more flexible, that's great. So for example, you can negotiate through the calendar. So you just put something in and the other person can just approve it, and then it's done. You don't even have to talk about it. If it's not something that someone wants to approve, they go to the messenger and have a conversation about it. So there is a lot less communication, so a lot less opportunity for having conflict. Plus, I think women in general, I don't know if you guys agree, but a lot of the women I work with feel that they're still married to someone even when they are separated. So they still organize everything, they still do the mental load of parenting. So all those women would have to do is just, I said to my husband, we should use this, it's amazing. So just to put everything in the app once, you have a vault where you put the birth certificate and the teacher and you put it all in there, you populate the calendar, great, you do all that. That's fantastic. And then if something changes, like ballet lesson, you just change it in the calendar and the other person gets a notification, and it's up to them then to deal with that. You don't have to do anything, say anything. So I think a lot of people, if they need documents, well, it's in the vault. They can go and look for it. So it becomes less of, I'm still have to manage you and give you all the things to do as a parent, because if someone wants to co-parent, they also need to step up and actually parent. Plus, one of the things that we are developing as well is having, it's not 100% ready yet, but it's AI being involved in the messaging, so people can, the technology is changing very rapidly. So myself and Sharon can actually train the AI to coach people on their communication. And the other thing is there's also a level of accountability in the app. So things read receipts and messages can't be deleted. So if someone decides that they're not responding, but they're reading your messages, then at one point, it's not that you're going crazy and someone says that doesn't happen. You are not, I'm never abusive, or I never do this, or I never do that. And you can go, well, actually, you do. And there's also a GPS only for handovers. You can't be followed on the app, so people don't have to worry. But if you do a handover, you can drop a pin in the app so you know that you're on time. So if someone is deciding to play games, then you can, when it's a gaslighting kind of situation, then you know that you're not nuts, right? And that you go, well, actually, this has been time-stamped. Was actually happening. I'm not crazy. And you can have that conversation if you want to. It really helps people to take their power back, and particularly women who've been in a high conflict or domestic violence situation, to not have to be exposed to it all the time, deal with it when they're going to have to deal with it on some level, because you're co-parenting in a really efficient and effective way, so you don't get overwhelmed, anxious, and when you're doing other parts of your life, that you actually can just really start living a really happy life and developing yourself. Because sometimes for some people, I'm like in the Turning Point course, we are definitely looking at people co-parenting and transforming their relationship, which is amazing. But some people are in a situation that the other parent is just not going to do it, and they're not going to change. They are going to be a high conflict personality forever. And I'm not being negative. That is sometimes for people, that's the way it is. And if they change, fantastic. But in the meantime, you can use that to protect yourself and to co-parent the best way possible. And also for your kids not to be exposed to the conflict, because it's all happening in the app and you don't have to do it in conversation where you see each other at handover. And so it's just a lot more controlled. And it's called the Cooperate app. We're really proud of it. It's gone live about a month ago. It's not glitchy because we bought something that we altered for Australian people particularly, and we really looked at what's going to help people with, and Sharon has been really helpful with that because she's a psych, and that really helps with working out those things and what works for people.
Lisanne, I'd love to get in contact with you afterwards and get more details on your app. But a question that I'm asked often by some clients when I recommend other apps is, if they lose their phone or something happens to their phone, is it all saved on a cloud?
Yeah.
So it's not tied down to the actual phone.
No, and one of the things that we have that a lot of people don't have is, because I was like, this has to happen in this app, is that it communicates with your normal calendar. Because one of the things that's really horrible for people is then they have to go to the app and then they have to their own calendar, and it's like actually really clunky. So
but but the other parent, doesn't see your personal calendar.
No, you can obviously, it's like you can toggle on things, and it's all very well thought about and protected, obviously, because we
you can download all the messages and things as a PDF.
Yeah, so it's the same. There's a personal vault as well where you can make notes. So, for yourself can go, oh, handover was great, this was fantastic, or it didn't go so well, and that can also be printed as part of it if you want to, or you can keep it private.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so
great.
The app is not designed to go to court. We really want people to communicate better, but it is, if it goes that way, you save a lot of time and money because it's all in one place. If you have to try to find it, you as the lawyers know that if you have to try to get it from all sorts of places, it's very costly.
If I see one more message printout and it's all, I have to guess what's the content. Oh, it's a mess. It's a mess. Yes, thank you.
So it saves a lot of money, a lot of time. But I like the accountability aspect of it as well. You would hope that people think twice about what they're typing, because you can't delete it, and that's really important. So it's not like whatever. No one will know, and I'll delete it, and I'll just tell someone that you didn't understand it very well what I said.
Yeah.
Well, can I just ask you a question? Sorry, Sarah. With regards to, I find that a lot of my clients, when they use the co-parenting apps, sometimes the app just doesn't get updated, or it's just been bought out by someone else and now defunct. Yeah. It's very common. And I'm like, oh gosh, as soon as they come in, they're out in 6 months. And I don't see my clients again for another 6 months, and that whole co-parenting app is gone. And I just really would love to see something that stays.
It's going to stay, trust me. We've put a lot of money into this, and it's the only, we've been talking to app people all over the world, and apparently this is the only app out there that has been actually developed by 2 family law kind of professionals, because most apps are developed by a disgruntled parent who has money. So they're a banker, or like often, and often dads, to be honest, from what I can tell. who have developed the app. So no, we're here to stay. Don't worry. Like, it would be a really bad investment of me to pull out of this one. No, but no, we won't go anywhere. It's really not a problem, and we do update it all the time. I don't want to talk too much about technicalities, but it's not glitchy. I can promise you that, because the guts of it has been used for 7 years and trial and tested, and we just customized it for Australians and for what we think needed to be in there. And it gets updated all the time. Like I said, we're just talking about getting that II involved, and I think it's the same with our Turning Point course. I think that too often things be put on the market. Like, here's a course, 30 years later, course is still the same, research is old. And what we also, this is the future thoughts that we have, but they're not finalized yet, is that the course and the app will interact with each other. So people get coaching through the app around how to communicate better and co-parent better. But those other things, we could only do one thing at the same time. There's lots of plans for updates. So don't worry, it will be updating. It's fresh, it's easy to use. I have a very short attention span, so.
Thank you, Nissan. And I think it just highlights that there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of tools out there that can help. So if you're stuck in a situation where you're putting up with abusive communications, excessive communications, there's one, ultimately you can get an intervention order, a family violence order, because if you're getting bombarded with messages from someone, that's abuse. That's not okay. It's not acceptable. Queensland's just brought in laws around coercive control to make it illegal. So if someone thinks they own you and separating hasn't changed that, you really need to reach out and get protections, because it's a dangerous mindset that they have. So I'm aware that we're close to running out of time, and we had a little bit of difficulty with the live. So some people are going to be watching this record, but I'd love to just maybe hear a final thought from everyone about some key things that perhaps women that are just separating or don't have a healthy co-parenting relationship and I'm sorry, I put you on the spot. I didn't have this prepared, but just maybe some key insights from your point of view.
Well, who would you like to start?
Whoever would like to go first.
I think what I'd like to say to women who are leaving or still in domestic violence relationships is don't be afraid of approaching a mediator. Whilst the mediator has to be neutral, and we're absolutely neutral, we can't be biased, we can't advocate for you. Oftentimes, these victims of family violence haven't spoken to anyone, right? We as mediators may be the first port of call. We may be hearing this fresh. And I think what's amazing about approaching a mediator is we can actually make certain referrals that could equip the client to go out there and get the support and that they need to get through this process, to get through this separation process, to get through the coming up with parenting agreements or resolving their property settlement matter. We can make those referrals where it's not a judge. We're not here to force results on them or outcomes or anything like that. It's quite a collaborative process. And yeah, we can certainly make those referrals, whether it be people who are finding themselves being abused through text messages. We can talk to them about a co-parenting app like yours, Lisanne. We can refer them to domestic violence services. We can help them set up a safe leaving home safely sort of arrangement. So like I said, we're not there to advocate on their behalf or give them legal advice, but we can even refer them to a CLC, a community legal centre, if they can't afford a private solicitor. So there are a lot of resources, like Joanne said, and it's definitely approach a mediator.
Yeah, or just in general, I think educate yourself. I got 2 things, I'll keep it short, but one of the things to try to educate yourself. Everyone is an expert on separation, but most of the time people talk from their own experience or their own horror stories, and doesn't mean your separation have to go that way. So I would say just educate yourself and ask lots of questions, mainly from professionals and resources. And even though friends, doesn't mean it's not valuable to have support, but just be careful not taking on other people's story. And I think as women, not a lot of women are not very good at this, is to really invest in yourself. Don't feel guilty about taking time out and doing what you love doing, or whatever it is that you want to do, educate, study, have a massage. Like, I don't know, but if you are happier in your own skin, you'll be a better parent, you'll be a better co-parent, and you'll be much better equipped to deal with the other parent no matter what comes at you, because you're not falling apart at the seams. So that would be my main tip, is to actually really look after yourself however you see fit, and do it without guilt.
Wonderful. Marilyn, John?
I think, look, one takeaway for people is that when you choose a mediator, make sure they are somebody that you can trust. A good mediator will instill that. You'll know very soon into your one-on-one talking with them whether it's a good fit for you. So that's critically important for us as mediators, that we're trusted by you and that the relationship's a good fit. And the second thing is, we're going to help you to negotiate. That's one of our main skills. Of course, assessing safety, but negotiation is so important, and giving you all the alternatives to an agreement that may be on the table. If you don't know what the alternatives are, then you don't really know what position you're in. So you need to be empowered with education, and you need to be with a mediator you can trust.
Wonderful, thank you. And John?
I agree with everyone. I liked Zara's initial comment on hope. I think if you meet a mediator, you find someone who engenders hope, because they're future focused, they're not past focused. You poor thing. There can be an element of understanding what's happened, but the essential focus of mediation is the future. And that's where the solutions lie. And the prospect of peace is possible. So I agree with Marilyn too, that keeping dignity and giving people respect, even if they've been perpetrators of domestic violence, and that's tricky. In a curious way, they demand more respect than anyone else. And maybe that's why they're perpetrators. Who knows? I'm not a psych. But to supply respect to everyone, meet a mediator, it won't be a bad thing.
Wonderful. Ro, from a client's perspective, any thoughts?
I agree with everyone that what you've all said and from my experience, but also doing the conflict management for one, having that one-on-one at any point during the mediation is really helpful. Being able to debrief with and understand that if your mediator's not working, find another one.
Take a break.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And look, we're all talking about mediator for shorthand because it's short, but if it's family law, you need to work with a family dispute resolution practitioner. Okay, we have postgraduate qualifications and training. We're registered with the Australian Attorney General's Department. Someone who's just a nationally accredited mediator does not have the education in family violence. They don't have the same understanding of the family law system necessarily. And even if they did work in aspects, you really need to make sure that your mediator is a family dispute resolution practitioner currently registered. And when you're doing your research, if you're coming across stuff that's talking about custody and visitation, it's probably from overseas. It's not Australian. We don't keep kids in custody in our system. Our kids they're not in jail. The entire focus is on helping the parents to be okay to provide the best possible care you can for your kids. It's hard, but just keep looking at what's going to be best for your kids, in terms of both safety and the relationships that are important to them for their lives, their individual human being, small but growing, who have other relationships Yep.
Joanne, also, I was going to say, if you're in doubt about a mediator or you don't know where to turn, go on to the registry, the Attorney General's website. Maybe someone can put it in the notes, and you will find, you put our name into a certain section. It's very easy to use, and it will come up with our qualifications and whether we are actually registered to, in fact, do family dispute resolution. So that's an important point, and it's easy to do.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Madeline, and we will share that out. So look at us with our time management as wonderful mediators. That way,
Good. I was just laughing because I'm registered as Elizabeth Eriks on the register because my parents are Dutch and I do weird things with names. And I was like, I'm like, the name is rare enough. People can find me.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it isn't mandatory for some FDRPs for one reason or another may not be on there. But if you can't find your mediator, ask them. I looked on the register and you're not there, are you? And they'll be able to.
People at the register. Sometimes they may not have their name or number up there, but if you get on the phone to the Attorney General's Department, they'll tell you if they're actually registered or not. Yes, so that's another avenue to find out exactly what you're dealing with as well. It's important to have people that are educated and know what they're doing.
Very much. So I think that's a good place to close. So look, I really want to thank all of our panel that have given up this time to share their knowledge with you and hopefully inspire you to trust your mediator, engage with them, tell them the truth about what's going on. Sometimes people are worried about that. It's confidential. It can't be used as evidence in court. It's safe to talk to a fully qualified family dispute resolution practitioner. But as Rowena said, if you don't gel, if you don't have confidence in them, find someone else. Don't give up. Things can improve.
Thank you, Joanna, for having us.
Joanne. Thank you, everybody.
So much.